Well, Curt, thanks for joining me here today. I know usually we interact in a different type of setting, either with people around the table, finance meeting, or at board meeting. And what people may not know about you is you have been our treasurer since 2014, since Gathering Point began. And we are so thankful for how you have filled that role. And I wondered if you could give us just a quick snapshot of how you have seen God move in and through Gathering Point in these last 12 years.
When I think of my role as treasurer, Rachel, I tend to live at the 5,000-foot level, so I'm more concerned about the bigger picture. But as I think back on my tenure as a treasurer, back to, as you say, 2014, I think about the history of Gathering Point and how we were formed. And I think back to that time. Well, actually, before I even come to that, I want to remember something Paul said yesterday that stuck in my mind. He said two things. He said, we need to think about things learned, and we need to be adaptive in our ministries. And so I was thinking back to Gathering Point's birth. We were started in the Cresby Auditorium on campus of Olivet Nazarene University as known as the 11 o'clock service, and we were not a traditional service. And Pastor Dan Boone at the time would preach the sermon at College Church, and he would jump in his Ford Mustang and race over to Cresby Auditorium, and to the great relief of the song director, would emerge on the stage at the time it was appointed for him to give the sermon. And in time, that 11 o'clock service, which really was an experiment, it was nothing but an experiment at the time. And in time, that became what we call North Campus, which is where we are here today. And after a few years, the North Campus became Gathering Point Church of the Nazarene. And so there was a point in time when the keys were handed to us and the title was handed to us, and it was said, you're on your own now. Go do your mission as God has led you. And so that has been an anchoring point, I think, for Gathering Point. And as we look back over time, we can see that God has been faithful. If we look at our ministry fund, for example, which is the fund that pays the bills, the staff salaries, the light bill, if we look at the revenues in that, we could see that our compounded annual growth rate is very modest. And yet, God has been faithful in all the years. What we have needed, we have received from God. And what we needed from God, we received it when we needed it. And so, in terms of things learned, God's faithfulness has spoken to me as we've looked at Gathering Point's history. But the other thing I would point out, and this is anchoring back to Paul's comment about being adaptive. In our birth, we were an experiment, as I said. We were an adaptation. Paul made the comment today that we continue to be adaptive in our ministries, which speaks to me of something in our DNA that says we will continue to color outside the lines to the extent we feel it's necessary to bring the kingdom to those around us. And in doing so, sometimes it's a little unsettling, but it's okay. It's okay.
When you think about talking to the next generation, young adult, young family, or someone who hasn't begun to take their next step in tithing or giving here at Gathering Point, why would you say that's such an important piece of their priorities in their life?
Well, first of all, it's part of what supports the church, and we've already talked about the importance of the church. So I think that needs to be a priority for any Christian. But there's a timing issue there which makes that a problem. If you come to Christ early in your life, the disciplines of faith can be shaped as you grow in your faith. Prayer, worship, reading the Bible, and giving of your financial resources and service. If you come to Christ later in life, or maybe you've been away from Christ but think about coming back to Christ, well, now you have a 12-year-old that has braces and a 10-year-old that's going to need them. You have a house with a mortgage and probably a car loan, and there's probably little or no room in the budget for tithing to the church. And yet, if Christ is Lord in your life, that's not an option. Now, I think God honors movement towards that objective. I don't think He thinks we should automatically flip a switch and be in a position to tithe like we always might have been if we had grown up in the church and had that discipline ingrained in our lives. So it becomes a process where we try to order our lives such that we give Him the honor and glory He deserves. Because at the end of the day, giving the tithe to the church is an act of worship. And if we really worship God and give out of gratitude for all that He has done and will do and can do, then I think it's not so much a burden. It's a glorious thing. And so that, I think God honors those things as we try to give Him first place in our lives and do those things that are necessary. Jesus said, I will build my church. He didn't say, I will build the church. He didn't say, I will build a church. He said, I will build my church. And so if Christ is Lord in your life, and if you're inclined to follow Him as a believer, then I think you need to be cognizant that you have an obligation to the church, to give to the church, to serve for the church, and to be part of the church's mission going forward. And in doing so, we overcome evil with good. That's about as simple as I can make it, Rachel.
Well, thank you for these little nuggets of wisdom. And I also want to take a minute to just thank you for all the years of service you have given to Gathering Point. We're so grateful for how you've served and how you've led us so well.
It's been an honor.
Thank you, Curt.